Imagine for a second that you are sitting in a boardroom. You know the kind of room I'm talking about.
Oh, absolutely.
It's one of those rooms that just smells expensive, like polished mahogany, old leather, maybe the faint scent of floor wax, and a lot of anxiety.
Definitely the anxiety.
Right. So you're sitting there, pen in hand, and you are about to sign off on an investment. And we are not talking about just any investment. We are talking about a $2 million bet.
I mean, that's a massive amount of capital to just put on the table. That is not petty cash.
It really isn't. Now, if you were spending that $2 million on, say, a piece of heavy machinery or like a massive new software system, think about the process you'd go through.
Right. You'd have a whole team.
Exactly. You would have a team of engineers stripping it down. You'd have stress tests. You'd run simulations 24/7 to see if the thing overheats. You would want all the data, the specs, the maintenance history.
Due diligence is basically the religion in that scenario. You wouldn't buy a factory machine just because it seemed nice or the salesperson had a firm handshake.
And here's the paradox that really kicks off today's deep dive. What if I told you that $2 million investment isn't a machine at all?
It's a person.
Yes.
Yes.
Specifically, a new C-suite executive,
Mm-hmm.
a CEO, a CFO, maybe a chief revenue officer. How is that decision usually made?
If we're being brutally honest about the standard corporate process, it usually comes down to, well, a confident handshake, a resume printed on very thick paper, and a really compelling story told over a steak dinner.
Exactly. It's the good story. We are just absolutely obsessed with the narrative. And today's deep dive is going to challenge that obsession in a major, major way. We're looking at this fascinating set of documents today.
Yeah, the internal strategy scripts and the critiques.
Right, from a group using a methodology they call ROS. And they have this phrase for that traditional hiring process that just completely stopped me in my tracks.
I think I know the exact one you're referring to.
They call it hope dressed in a suit.
That is just a devastatingly accurate description.
It is, isn't it? Hope dressed in a suit.
Mm.
Because it implies that all the fanfare, the interviews, the reference checks, it's all this pageantry to cover up the fact that we're essentially just crossing our fingers.
Right.
So our mission today for this deep dive is to explore the alternative. If we stop hiring based on hope and storytelling, what's left? Well, according to our sources, the answer is it's physics.
Specifically, a mathematical formula from 1948.
Yes. We are talking about using information theory to predict, with actual mathematical precision, whether that fancy new executive is going to crash and burn. We're talking about saving millions in what the sources call capital leakage.
It sounds almost like science fiction at first glance, like Moneyball, but for the corporate boardroom.
But it is actually a return to rigorous governance. It's about moving from feeling to measuring.
So buckle up. We are going from the boardroom straight to the blackboard. Let's unpack this.
Let's dive in. I want to start with this idea of the narrative versus reality. Because, let's be real, you've been there, I've been there. You meet a candidate, they're charismatic, they look the part.
They have the whole package.
Right. They have this great arc to their career story. They sit there and say, I fought this battle, I turned around this division, I conquered that new market. And it feels good. It feels safe.
It feels safe. But the source material highlights this explicitly as a cognitive illusion. It notes that it is quite literally staggering how much trust organizations place in a candidate's narrative.
Staggering. That's a really strong word. It suggests we're all just collectively delusional.
It does. But think about what's actually happening during that interview process. When a search committee looks at a candidate and says, this person has potential, what are they actually doing?
I mean, they're basically guessing.
Essentially, yes. As one of the analysts in our source material puts it, a character they refer to as Shannon. When a committee claims a candidate has potential, they are making a probabilistic claim without an actual probability model.
Oh, man. I love that line. It's so cutting. It's like saying, I'm 90% sure it's going to rain tomorrow, but you haven't looked at a barometer or a satellite map or any historical data. You feel it in your knees.
Precisely. And in your personal life, if you trust your knees and get rained on, you just get wet.
Right.
But in the context of a multi-million-dollar corporation, that isn't just sloppy. The sources argue it's a fundamental failure of governance.
A failure of governance. That really raises the stakes significantly. It moves the conversation from just bad luck to actual negligence.
It does. And there's a key distinction made in the documents that I think is brilliant here. They compare applause versus safety.
Right. I saw that. One gets you applause, the other keeps your company out of trouble.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A great narrative That hope dressed in a suit we talked about, it gets you applause in the boardroom. Everyone feels good about the hire. The board pats themselves on the
The
back.
press release looks
The
amazing.
press release is phenomenal. But applause doesn't protect the balance sheet. Governance requires measurement, not just a good pitch deck.
It's funny because we usually think of the boring choice as the safe choice, but here they're saying the exciting choice, the one that gets the applause, is actually the dangerous one because it's completely unmeasured.
Correct. The applause is an emotional reaction to a story. Safety is a calculated reaction to data.
Okay, so if we can't trust the story, we need a measurement. And this is where the deep dive takes a hard left turn into nerd territory, which I absolutely love. The source material describes a scene where they are looking at a computer terminal, and on the screen is a formula.
Yes, Shannon's entropy.
H equals negative sigma p sub I log base 2 of p sub I. Now, I haven't done calculus since high school.
Most people haven't.
Right, and I assume you listening aren't doing log calculations on your morning commute either. But this is Claude Shannon, right? The father of the information age.
That's the one. Bell Labs, 1948. Claude Shannon was working on information theory. He was trying to figure out a very specific problem, basically how to send messages through wires, network wires, without them getting garbled by noise. And he defined entropy as a measure of informational uncertainty.
Informational uncertainty. Okay, help me bridge the gap here. How do we get from 1948 telephone wires to hiring a CFO in 2026?
It's all about the signal. To understand this, you have to stop looking at a resume as a list of brags and start looking at it as a data set. The ROSE methodology treats a career path just like a signal transmission.
Interesting.
Every job you take, every time you switch industries, every lateral move or promotion, those are data points.
So my LinkedIn profile isn't just a resume, it's a data set generating a signal.
Exactly. And when you plot those data points over time, they generate a measurable signal. Now, just like a radio signal, that career path can be clear or it can be noisy.
And noisy in this context means what exactly? High entropy.
Correct. Shannon's formula allows them to calculate the entropy of a career trajectory. If someone has a low entropy signal, it means their path is readable, it's stable, it's purposeful. There is a clear direction.
Give me an example of that. What does a low entropy career actually look like?
Imagine someone who starts as a junior accountant. 3 years later, they are a senior accountant, then a finance manager, then a controller, then a VP of finance. It's linear. It makes sense.
Right. You can predict the next move easily. It's low surprise.
Exactly. Low surprise equals low entropy. But then you have high entropy. This signals disorder, chaos, lack of coherence.
What does that look like on paper?
Maybe they started in pharmaceutical sales. Then they jumped to a crypto startup that folded in a year. Then they took a lateral move into logistics operations. Then they tried to start their own consulting firm for a bit. And now they want to be your chief strategy officer.
I see. The signal is fuzzy. You don't really know what they are actually good at or where they are even going.
There's just too much uncertainty. And according to the physics, this isn't just being well-rounded or adventurous. This is chaos.
That is the exact word the sources use, right? It creates a signal of chaos.
Yes. And I want to be really clear here. The physics isn't judging the person. It's not saying they are a bad human being. It's saying that the trajectory they are on carries a high probability of disorder.
This is where it gets really interesting to me because I think we've been trained by corporate culture to view jumping around as being agile or adaptable. We call them pivot masters or whatever.
Right.
But this framework says, no, look at the math. And there's a specific number, right? A magic number where the alarm bells actually start ringing.
Yes. The threshold is 2.0.
2.0.
Oh, okay.
So if your career entropy index hits 2.1, you're in the red zone.
You are. The source material is very specific about this metric. An entropy index above 2.0 indicates frequent nonlinear shifts and role fragmentation.
Role fragmentation. That sounds painful, like you're being pulled in way too many directions.
It's painful for the company that hires them, that's for sure. This threshold isn't just a random number they picked. The model shows that candidates above 2.0 carry a significantly elevated risk classification. And this brings us to one of the most frightening concepts in this entire deep dive, the quick quit.
The quick quit. This is what keeps board members up at night staring at the ceiling. You hire the guy, you pay the massive signing bonus, you do the press release, you have the big town hall meeting where everyone cheers, and 18 months later, he's gone.
Or sooner, 12 months, 9 months.
And usually when that happens, the hiring organization goes into a complete crisis of confidence. HR says, maybe our culture wasn't a good fit, or maybe our onboarding process is broken.
Right. They internalize the failure. They blame themselves. They think they broke the
But
executive.
the math says otherwise.
Correct. If that candidate had an entropy score above 2.0, the source says the organization didn't create this instability, they inherited it.
Wow. That kind of absolves the company in a way, but it also completely indicts their hiring process.
Yes, completely. The phrase used in the text is, the exit was written into the career physics before the offer letter was even signed.
That is chilling. Written into the career physics, it sounds so deterministic. It's like buying a car that you don't know has a cracked engine block. It runs fine for 10 miles, and then boom. But the crack was there the whole time.
Precisely. And you didn't see the crack because you were looking at the shiny paint job, the narrative, instead of checking the engine specs, the entropy. You were seduced by the applause.
So we have this 2.0 threshold. We have this idea of inheriting instability. But I really want to talk about the cost, because we started this deep dive talking about a $2 million investment. If you ignore the math, what is the actual price tag of that mistake?
The sources are very specific here. They cite a figure of $1.3 million.
$1.3 million, and that's just gone. Poof.
That is referred to as capital leakage per failed C-suite hire. And frankly, knowing the corporate world, that feels like a conservative estimate to me.
You think it's actually higher?
Think about what goes into it. That $1.3 million covers the search firm fees, which can be hundreds of thousands of dollars alone, the severance package, the legal fees, the wasted salary. But what about the strategic costs?
Right. The lost time, the momentum.
Exactly. If your CEO or CFO flames out in 14 months, your corporate strategy has effectively been frozen for that entire time. Your competitors didn't freeze, they kept moving.
Yeah.
The opportunity cost of a failed leader is just massive.
It's a hemorrhage.
It is a financial hemorrhage caused by ignoring the math.
Mm-hmm.
And the reaction in the source dialogue really drives this home. You have the soft skill appearance of hiring the handshake, the hope colliding with the very hard financial reality of a $1.3 million loss.
It really highlights the absurdity of the whole thing. We pinch pennies on operational costs. We have hour-long meetings about how much we spend on coffee in the break room or software licenses. But then we essentially gamble over $1 million on a good vibe from a steak dinner interview.
That's why the expert in the text, Shannon, is so incredibly clinical about it. He says, potential is a narrative. Entropy is a measurement. One belongs in a pitch deck. The other belongs in a governance framework.
I want to print that on a t-shirt. Potential is a narrative. Entropy is a measurement. It's such a fundamental shift in mindset.
It demands that we stop treating executive search as an art form and start treating it as an engineering problem. Or at least admit that it is an engineering problem, whether we want to treat it like one or not.
And there is always a but. I can hear you, the listener, right now. You're probably looking at your own resume. You're thinking, wait a minute, is all movement bad?
It's a very fair question.
I mean, surely someone can move around a bit and still be a great hire, right?
Yeah.
If I switch jobs to learn a new skill, does that automatically make me chaotic? Does that make me a bad investment?
This is where we need to layer in the next critical concept from the sources. We have to look at the launch strategy document. The critique at the script mentions that entropy is just the first signal.
Right, because just knowing someone is volatile might not be the whole picture.
Exactly. Once you identify that a career trajectory is volatile, meaning it has high entropy, the very next question is why? Is it chaos? Or is it propulsion?
Okay. So, is there a method to the madness?
That leads us to the concept of skill velocity delta.
Skill velocity delta. That sounds like something straight out of a NASA manual. Break that down for us.
It's asking a simple question. Is the candidate actually building new capabilities? That's the velocity. Or are they just moving around to escape stagnation?
Ah, the running away versus running towards distinction.
Precisely. Think about it. High entropy combined with high skill acquisition is a very specific archetype. That's a rapid learner. That's a polymath. The person who says, I learned finance, then I learned operations, then I mastered digital marketing.
That person is volatile, but they are becoming a weapon. They are compounding their value with every move.
Yes. But high entropy without skill velocity, that's just running away. That's the quick quit waiting to happen.
That is such a vital nuance. Because I can imagine listeners thinking, oh no, I changed jobs 3 times in the last 4 years. Am I completely unemployable now?
And the answer to that is not necessarily. But you have to look at the delta. Did those moves result in a measurable increase in your capabilities?
Yeah.
If you are just doing the exact same work for a different logo on the building, then the physics suggests you are a risk.
It's about the growth.
Yes, movement isn't always bad, but movement without skill velocity is just friction. And in physics, friction creates heat. And in a career, heat leads to burnout and sudden exits.
So, connecting the dots here, the Rose framework isn't saying you have to stay at one company for 40 years like our grandparents did. The gold watch era is officially over.
No, not at all. That era is completely gone.
But it is saying that every move you make leaves a trace in the data. And when you look at those traces over a 20-year career, they tell a truth that your perfectly rehearsed interview answers might try to hide.
That's the core message. We often think we are the authors of our own stories, and in interviews, we try to edit that story to look perfect. We say, oh, I left that job because I was seeking new challenges.
Right, the classic interview line.
But the math looks at the raw footage.
Yeah.
It looks at the physics of the trajectory. Did you actually take on a new challenge? Or did you just increase the entropy of your signal? You simply can't spin entropy.
You can't spin entropy. That's the takeaway right there.
It really changes how you look at a resume, doesn't it?
Completely. I'm never going to look at a LinkedIn profile the same way again. I'm going to be sitting there trying to calculate the logarithm of their job changes in my head. I'll be wondering, is this person a 1.5 or a 2.2?
And for anyone sitting on a board or a hiring committee, this has to be a wake-up call. The tools exist to minimize this risk. That $1.3 million loss isn't an accident anymore. It's a calculation error.
It's capital leakage that could have been plugged with a calculator.
Exactly. And perhaps a bit of humility, admitting that our gut instinct, that hope, just isn't as good as the math.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's quickly recap the journey. We started with the high stakes, the $2 million C-suite hire.
We exposed the flaw in the traditional method, which is relying on the narrative, that hope dressed in a suit.
We introduced the solution, Shannon's entropy, a physics formula from 1948 that measures uncertainty.
We established the threshold, that magic number 2.0. Anything above that is a signal of chaos.
We learned the cost, $1.3 million in capital leakage when we ignored the signal.
And finally, we added the nuance of skill velocity. It's not just about staying put. It's about whether your movement is generating real growth or just generating noise.
It's an incredibly powerful framework. And it definitely leaves me thinking about my own career. Am I building a signal of stability and velocity, or am I just creating entropy?
It's a question worth asking yourself. In a world driven by data, we are all generating a signal every single day. The real question is yours the one you actually want to be broadcasting?
That is the big question, and I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought. We've talked a lot today about hiring others. We've talked about the view from the boardroom looking down at the resume.
Right.
But flip the mirror for a second. When you are the one looking for a job, when you are polishing your resume, crafting that perfect story about why you left your last 3 gigs, remember this deep dive.
Yes.
The person across the table might be nodding and smiling at your story. They might be giving you that applause we talked about. But somewhere in that building, there might be an algorithm or just a very smart person with a calculator checking the physics.
They might be checking to see if your exit is already written into the equation.
Exactly. Are you a narrative success or a mathematical risk? The difference might just be 2.0.
A sobering thought to leave on.
Thanks for diving deep with us today. Check your entropy, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Goodbye.